Welcome back to Alien Love Stories. Tonight I have something to tell you, but promise me you'll listen until the end. Have you ever tasted something so delicious it literally changed your entire world? Well, I have, and trust me, the consequences are beyond imagination. My name's Amelia, and before you ask, no, my life hasn't exactly been normal lately. In fact, ever since a mysterious, charming chocolatier appeared in our sleepy little town, reality itself has seemed a bit flexible. It all began on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. The sun shone gently through the cafe windows, casting a warm glow over the antique wooden tables. The cafe, which I owned, had always been my sanctuary. The scent of fresh coffee brewing, pastries baking, and gentle chatter filled the space with comfort. That's when he walked in. He was unlike anyone I'd ever seen. His eyes, impossibly deep and almost golden in hue, surveyed the room quietly. His hair was a striking shade of silvery white, oddly youthful despite the color. He wore an elegant coat tailored to perfection and held a small, ornate box in his hand. He approached the counter, smiling gently. "Bonjour, Amelia." Surprised, I stared at him. "How do you know my name?" He laughed softly, a musical sound that seemed to fill the entire room. "Let's just say, I've heard wonderful things about you." Blushing slightly, I smiled politely. "Well then, you have me at a disadvantage. I don't know yours." "My apologies," he said warmly, extending a graceful hand. "My name is Lucien Devereaux." I shook his hand gently, immediately noticing a faint warmth and electric energy beneath his touch. "French?" He smiled mysteriously. "Something like that." He placed the ornate box gently on the counter, opening it to reveal perfectly crafted chocolates, each shimmering slightly under the cafe lights. "These are for you," Lucien whispered, eyes sparkling playfully. "A small token of friendship." I stared, amazed at the craftsmanship. Each chocolate appeared almost too beautiful to eat, swirled with shimmering colors, delicate patterns, and flecks of gold. "They're stunning," I said quietly. "Did you make these?" He nodded gently. "Yes, and I believe you'll find them extraordinary." Something in his voice caught my attention. Gentle confidence mixed with playful secrecy. "What do you mean, extraordinary?" His golden eyes twinkled mischievously. "Well, Amelia, chocolate, when made correctly, can have remarkable effects. Try one, you'll see." Hesitating briefly, I selected one shimmering chocolate from the box. It smelled heavenly, sweet, rich, inviting. Under Lucien's encouraging gaze, I took a cautious bite. The flavor was exquisite, silky and smooth, melting instantly on my tongue. But then, a sudden burst of warmth rushed through my body, my vision flickering slightly. I blinked rapidly, momentarily dizzy. When my vision cleared, everything around me seemed subtly changed. Lucien watched carefully, clearly expecting my reaction. He smiled warmly. "Feeling all right?" I nodded slowly, slightly confused but exhilarated. That was unlike anything I've tasted. "But did something happen?" He chuckled softly. "Perhaps. Tell me, Amelia, what year is it?" I laughed nervously. "It's 2025, of course." "Why?" Lucien smiled mysteriously. "Take a look around. You might be surprised." Confused, I glanced around the cafe. Everything appeared the same at first, until my gaze fell upon the newspaper rack near the door. My heart froze instantly. Instead of familiar headlines, the date read clearly, October 21st, 1925. I spun back to Lucien, eyes wide with shock. "What did you do?" He smiled warmly, gently reassuring. "Relax. It's only temporary. You see, Amelia, the chocolate you just tasted contains particles that temporarily alter your perception of history, allowing brief glimpses into alternate timelines." I laughed nervously. "Alternate timelines? You're joking, right?" Lucien smiled knowingly. "Not at all. Think of it as reality-flavored chocolate. What you're experiencing is very real, but short-lived. Consider it a little adventure." Before I could respond, a sudden bark echoed from outside the cafe. My dog, Charlie, a fluffy golden retriever, burst through the door excitedly, bounding straight toward me. "Charlie!" I exclaimed, confused yet relieved to see something familiar. How did you get out of the house? But before I could scold him, Charlie suddenly stopped, sat politely, and said clearly, Bonjour, Amelia. Comment ça va aujourd'hui? I stared at my dog in total disbelief. Lucien chuckled softly. Oh, I may have forgotten to mention a small side effect. The chocolate occasionally alters minor elements of reality, like language. Charlie tilted his head curiously, speaking perfect French again. Pourquoi me regardes-tu comme ça? I covered my mouth, eyes wide. My dog is speaking French. Lucien smiled gently, eyes twinkling warmly. At least he's polite. I turned to Lucien, panicking slightly. Can this be reversed? He laughed softly, comforting and reassuring. Of course. The effects fade naturally within a few days. Until then, you have a bilingual dog. Could be worse. Charlie wagged his tail cheerfully. J'aime bien parler français. Despite the absurdity, I couldn't help but laugh gently. Well, at least someone's enjoying it. Lucien smiled warmly. Exactly. And trust me, Amelia, this is only the beginning. I raised an eyebrow cautiously. The beginning of what? His golden eyes sparkled gently, voice lowering to an enchanting whisper. A journey that will reveal not just history, but hidden truths about your own heart. Are you ready to experience what reality could be? My heart quickened, curiosity overwhelming caution. Finally, I nodded softly, smiling shyly. Yes, I'm ready. He extended his hand gently. Then let's begin. As I accepted his hand, Charlie happily trotted beside us, barking enthusiastically, in perfect French, of course. The next morning, I woke to the comforting smell of fresh brewed coffee and warm croissants. Normally, this would have been a perfect start to the day, but today was anything but ordinary, especially since Charlie, my formerly normal golden retriever, was now humming La Vie en Rose, gently to himself in perfect pitch, tail wagging as he strolled casually through the kitchen. Bonjour, Amelia, he greeted cheerfully. Bien dormi? I rubbed my eyes, still half convinced I was dreaming. Morning, Charlie. Still speaking French, huh? Évidemment, he replied, cocking his head as if confused by my question. Why would I not? C'est une belle langue. I sighed softly, pouring coffee and taking a seat at the table. Right. Why wouldn't my dog prefer French? Charlie tilted his head, eyes gentle. Ça va bien, Amelia? I forced a smile. Oui, Charlie. Ça va bien? He wagged his tail contentedly, trotting off toward the backyard. Shaking my head, I checked my phone, hoping everything else had returned to normal. No such luck. The notifications on my phone seemed odd. Texts from friends referred casually to events I had absolutely no memory of. Apparently, last night I'd posted a photo online of myself and Lucien, posing in front of a vintage 1920s-style café. The caption read simply, "A night I'll never forget." I stared blankly. I had absolutely no recollection of taking that picture. Before I could investigate further, the café door chimed, interrupting my thoughts. Lucien entered gracefully, smiling warmly as he approached. Today, he wore an impeccably tailored blazer over a silk shirt, giving him an air both elegant and mysterious. Good morning, Amelia, he greeted softly, eyes sparkling playfully. Sleep well? Considering I apparently traveled to 1925, altered history, and now have a bilingual dog? Yeah, I slept great, I replied sarcastically, though a smile betrayed my amusement. Lucien chuckled softly, his laugh musical. Apologies, I should have warned you more clearly. The chocolate's effects can be unpredictable, especially on newcomers. Unpredictable? I raised an eyebrow. That's an understatement. He shrugged gently, still smiling warmly. It's part of the fun, and besides, you handled it marvelously. Even Charlie seems delighted. We glanced outside to see Charlie happily chasing butterflies, occasionally pausing to politely greet passing neighbors in flawless French. Everyone seemed more amused than startled. Another effect of Lucien's chocolate, I suspected. Lucien, I need answers, I said gently but firmly. What's really happening here? How did chocolate alter history, or at least my perception of it? He paused thoughtfully before taking a seat across from me, eyes gentle. Amelia, what humans call history isn't a straight line. It's more like an endless web of possibilities. My chocolates contain a special essence that temporarily connects the eater to these alternate possibilities. You experience them as real, because in some universe, they are. My mind raced. So, yesterday, when I saw 1925, that was real somewhere? He nodded slowly. Exactly. You glimpsed an alternate reality. Normally the effects fade quickly, but occasionally they leave behind minor alterations. Like a French-speaking dog, I said dryly. He laughed gently, nodding again. Precisely. I studied Lucien carefully, intrigued but cautious. Who exactly are you, Lucien? Because clearly you're not an ordinary chocolatier. His golden eyes softened gently. You're right, Amelia. I'm not exactly from here. From here? I questioned softly. You mean, not from this town? He smiled faintly, eyes twinkling warmly. Not from this planet. I stared, half expecting him to laugh, but he remained perfectly serious. You're an alien chocolatier? I whispered incredulously. He chuckled softly, nodding gently. Indeed, my people specialize in confectionery sciences. On my world, taste isn't merely pleasure, it's power. Flavor can alter reality itself, shaping history and destiny. I shook my head, amazed. Why come to Earth? He leaned forward slightly, eyes sincere. Because I was searching for something specific, a human who could withstand the chocolate's power without losing themselves, a person special enough to bridge realities. And you think that person is me? I whispered, heart racing slightly. He smiled softly, nodding gently. Yes, you're unique, Amelia. Yesterday proved that. My face warmed slightly. But why me? He hesitated gently, then reached carefully into his coat, pulling out a tiny locket. Opening it, he revealed an old photograph. A woman from the 1920s who looked exactly like me. Who is she? I asked quietly, stunned. Her name was Amelia, too, he whispered gently, voice warm with memory. My grandmother met her nearly a century ago when she first visited Earth. This Amelia changed history profoundly, helping build a peace between our worlds. But later her memories were erased for her own safety. My heart raced faster, thoughts spinning. And you think I might be related to her? I believe you're connected, he whispered gently. Your reaction to my chocolate proves your unique heritage. Amelia, you carry the same extraordinary potential as she did. I shook my head, struggling to grasp it all. This is unbelievable. Lucien smiled softly. Believe it, Amelia. You're meant for greater things than you realize. Suddenly, Charlie bounded into the café again, interrupting excitedly. Amelia! Lucien! Venez vite! Quelque chose se passe dehors. We hurried outside. My jaw dropped as I stared skyward. Strange, shimmering lights filled the morning sky, colors I'd never imagined possible, dancing gently above us. What's happening? I whispered softly. Lucien looked upward calmly, voice serious but gentle. It appears your tasting altered more than language. It momentarily weakened barriers between worlds. My heart pounded nervously. And that's dangerous? He smiled reassuringly. Not if managed correctly. Amelia, you're about to experience something wonderful. Before I could reply, gentle beams of light descended softly from the sky, forming ethereal shapes of beings unlike any I'd imagined. Beautiful, glowing creatures hovering gently above. Charlie barked enthusiastically. Magnifique! Lucien gently took my hand, voice soft and encouraging. Don't be afraid, Amelia. They've come because they sense your potential. I stared into Lucien's warm, trusting eyes, feeling inexplicably safe. Will you stay with me? He squeezed my hand gently. Always. Together we stepped forward, toward beings of light, toward mysteries unfolding, toward possibilities I had never dared to dream were real. Standing beneath a sky swirling with ethereal beings, my hand clasped firmly in Lucien's comforting grasp, I felt a mixture of wonder, curiosity, and admittedly mild panic, but Lucien's calm presence kept my fear at bay, reminding me I wasn't alone. The glowing beings hovered gently around us, radiating tranquility and warmth. One slowly descended, shimmering brighter than the rest. It stopped a few feet above us, its form shifting gently, vaguely humanoid yet ethereal. A soothing, melodic voice resonated softly in our minds. Greetings, Amelia and Lucien. We sensed your awakening to alternate realities. Your connection is powerful. My voice trembled slightly as I replied, Who or what are you? We are observers, the voice replied gently. Guardians of possibilities and keepers of alternate timelines. When someone glimpses beyond their own reality, we ensure balance is preserved. Lucien nodded respectfully, speaking softly. I understand, but Amelia's potential is unlike any human I've encountered. Her taste of the chocolate opened realities in a way no human has before. Indeed, the being replied gently, her heritage runs deep. She is descended from one who once bridged our worlds. I exchanged a stunned glance with Lucien. You mean the Amelia from the photograph? Exactly, the voice affirmed warmly. You carry her essence, her openness to new realities, her courage, her empathy. Charlie barked excitedly in French, clearly thrilled by the strange visitors. C'est incroyable. Vous êtes tous magnifiques. One glowing being dipped gracefully toward Charlie, gently touching his head. Charlie's tail wagged furiously. Merci, cher Charlie, the voice replied playfully, clearly amused. Surprised, I smiled gently. Even cosmic beings speak French now? We speak the language of the heart, the voice explained warmly. Charlie's affection is contagious. Charlie barked proudly. Je suis très affectueux. Lucien chuckled softly, eyes twinkling warmly. Apparently, universal charm works for dogs too. Suddenly remembering my manners, I spoke politely to the beings. Would you, like anything? Coffee, perhaps. The glowing form paused, intrigued. Coffee? Yes, I replied shyly. Humans drink it for energy and comfort. Interesting, the being murmured gently. We observe your world often. The concept of comfort is intriguing. We would indeed like to experience coffee. Within minutes, the cafe was bustling, though instead of regular patrons, glowing cosmic visitors hovered curiously around the tables. I carefully prepared cappuccinos, amused yet slightly nervous about serving interdimensional guests. Lucien smiled warmly, gently helping. You're handling this remarkably well, Amelia. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. I guess after speaking dogs and reality-altering chocolate, nothing feels strange anymore. He gently squeezed my hand, voice soft. Exactly. You're adapting beautifully. We carefully delivered the cappuccinos to the glowing beings. The ethereal leader gently approached one cup, its shimmering energy gently enveloping it. After a moment, its glow intensified warmly. Remarkable, the voice murmured appreciatively. Your coffee is indeed comforting. Charlie wagged enthusiastically. Elle fait aussi des gâteaux délicieux. I blushed, embarrassed but amused. Charlie says I bake delicious cakes too. Perhaps another time, the being replied gently, amused. But now, we must address why we came. The atmosphere quieted slightly. Lucien moved protectively closer. Are Amelia's powers causing problems? No, the being reassured gently, but it has drawn attention from others. Beings less benevolent, more chaotic. They might seek to exploit Amelia's ability to alter realities. My heart quickened anxiously. What should I do? You must learn control, the being explained gently. Master your ability to perceive and influence realities. Lucien can teach you. But hurry. The more aware you become, the stronger your power grows, and the more vulnerable you become. I nodded firmly, determined. I'll learn. Lucien gently touched my shoulder, reassuring. You're not alone, Amelia. I'll stay beside you. Charlie barked courageously. Moi aussi. Je vous protégerai tous les deux. The being radiated gentle amusement. With such loyal friends, you are truly fortunate. I smiled warmly, nodding. Very fortunate. The glowing form gently floated upward, voice softening. We must leave now. Remember, Amelia, your heart guides your power. Trust yourself. Trust Lucien. Trust love. It will guide you through any darkness. One by one, the beings vanished gently into the dawn sky, leaving Lucien, Charlie, and me standing quietly together, absorbing their message. Lucien gently turned toward me, eyes soft. We have work ahead, Amelia. I smiled bravely. I'm ready. Charlie wagged proudly. Moi aussi, je suis prêt. Lucien laughed softly. Then let's begin. Together we stood strong, ready to face whatever realities awaited us. Because even though my world had changed in impossible ways, with Lucien's warm hand holding mine and Charlie's cheerful French bark, I knew everything would somehow be all right. Over the next several days, my cozy cafe became a place of incredible discoveries and unexpected lessons. Each morning began with Lucien patiently teaching me how to manage my newfound abilities, and each afternoon ended with Charlie proudly narrating our progress, in perfect French, to any confused customer who'd listen. Today's lesson took place in my kitchen, surrounded by an assortment of chocolates, ingredients, and glowing vials Lucien had brought from his own world. He leaned gently against the countertop, watching me carefully as I stirred a pot of melted chocolate, his golden eyes warm with encouragement. The trick, Lucien explained gently, is intention. Chocolate responds to your emotions. If you're distracted, the results might be unpredictable. I sighed softly, stirring carefully. Great. No pressure then. Lucien smiled gently, stepping closer. You're doing wonderfully, Amelia. Trust yourself. Taking a calming breath, I tried again, focusing deeply. As I stirred, the chocolate took on a gentle shimmer, colors dancing softly across its smooth surface. Lucien smiled proudly. Perfect. You're mastering this quickly. Just as I started feeling confident, Charlie trotted into the kitchen, tail wagging. Attention! Un homme étrange est dehors. Confused, I glanced at Lucien. Charlie says there's a strange man outside. Lucien frowned cautiously. Let's check. Outside stood a tall, shadowy figure near the cafe's entrance. His presence felt slightly off, like a ripple in reality itself. He turned slowly, revealing sharp features and piercing silver eyes. Lucien's expression darkened instantly. Thane, Lucien whispered tensely. What are you doing here? Thane approached slowly, smiling with cold politeness. Lucien, I heard fascinating rumors of your human experiment. Introducing powerful chocolates to this primitive world. Risky, isn't it? Lucien stepped protectively between Thane and me, voice calm but firm. Amelia is not an experiment. She's special, and off limits to you. Thane raised an eyebrow coolly. We'll see. Reality manipulation is dangerous, Lucien, especially in inexperienced hands. My heart raced nervously, but I stepped forward bravely. My hands aren't inexperienced. Lucien's teaching me carefully. Thane studied me thoughtfully, eyes calculating. Remarkable. Confident for a human. Charlie growled softly, protective instincts flaring. Je n'aime pas cet homme. Thane glanced dismissively at Charlie, then focused again on me. Tell me, Amelia, do you understand the true power you hold? How easily your reality could fracture? Lucien stepped closer, eyes narrowing protectively. She understands, and she knows to be careful. Thane's eyes glittered ominously. Careful isn't always enough. He waved his hand gently. Instantly, the sky darkened, colors inverted, and I found myself standing in a bizarre, warped version of the cafe. Everything shimmered with strange colors, my surroundings shifting erratically. Panic surged through me. Lucien! He quickly took my hand, his calm voice guiding me. Stay focused, Amelia. Ground yourself in something real. Remember, intention controls your power. Taking a deep breath, I shut my eyes, concentrating deeply on one powerful, comforting thought. The cafe, warm and safe, exactly as I knew it. Slowly, the chaos faded. Reality returned to normal. Thane looking genuinely surprised. Lucien smiled softly, proudly. You see, Thane? Amelia's potential is extraordinary. Thane studied me silently, then nodded slowly. Very well, I underestimated you. But remember this. There will come a time when Lucien cannot protect you. With that chilling warning, Thane vanished suddenly, reality rippling briefly as he disappeared. I sighed shakily, relieved yet shaken. Lucien gently touched my shoulder. You handled that perfectly. Charlie proudly nudged my leg. Bravo, Amelia. Tu es très courageuse. I smiled weakly, heart still racing. Thanks, guys, but who was that? Lucien hesitated gently before answering. Thane is from my home world, a reality bender. He seeks power, not balance. You showed him your strength, but he might return. I nodded slowly. Then I'll be ready. Lucien smiled warmly, squeezing my hand gently. We'll be ready together. Charlie barked confidently. Oui, ensemble! Laughing softly, tension melting away, we returned inside, ready to continue our lessons. I realized something powerful. Despite uncertainty, despite danger, I was no longer afraid. With Lucien's calm presence and Charlie's joyful encouragement, I knew we could face anything. After all, nothing strengthened reality like the love and trust we shared. The incident with Thane left me cautious but determined. Over the following days, Lucien guided me through exercises to strengthen my newfound control over reality-bending chocolate, while Charlie, proud as ever, served as my loyal French-speaking cheerleader. Then as life began to settle into a somewhat stable routine, an entirely different kind of challenge arose. My family decided to make an unexpected visit. My mother, known for her blunt curiosity, arrived first, immediately taking an intense interest in Lucien. She watched him closely as he helped me arrange desserts, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "So, Lucien," she began conversationally, "you're a chocolatier. From France, was it?" Lucien smiled warmly, effortlessly charming. "Something like that." My mother raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Your accent sounds unusual." Charlie trotted past cheerfully. "C'est parce qu'il est extraterrestre," I quickly translated, laughing nervously. "Charlie says Lucien's accent sounds out of this world." My mother nodded slowly, suspicious but amused. "Clever dog." The evening intensified as the rest of my family arrived. My father, perpetually skeptical, my brother Jason, relentlessly sarcastic, and my younger sister Emily, eternally romantic. Dinner began smoothly until my mother casually reached for a small tray of Lucien's special chocolates. "Wait," I blurted nervously, startling everyone. "Those chocolates are experimental." My father raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Experimental chocolates?" Lucien gently interjected, calm and reassuring. "They're perfectly safe, just mildly unique." Before I could stop him, Jason, ever daring, popped one into his mouth. His eyes widened in shock as he stared blankly at the wall. "Whoa! Did the room just flip upside down?" Emily excitedly grabbed a chocolate. Moments later, she gasped dreamily, "I think I just glimpsed a world where I'm marrying a prince." My mother cautiously took one next. After a brief pause, she laughed softly, astonished. "I just saw myself as a famous opera singer." My father, stubbornly skeptical, finally relented, nibbling carefully. His eyes widened instantly. "Did we just move backward through time?" I shot Lucien a worried glance. He whispered gently, reassuringly, "It's all right. Just temporary glimpses." But before anyone could process these bizarre experiences, Charlie happily announced in perfect French, "Je peux maintenant lire dans vos pensées." Everyone stared at Charlie, shocked. My mother's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Did the dog just say he can read our minds?" Charlie wagged cheerfully. "Exactement," I quickly translated nervously. My father rubbed his temples. "I think I need to lie down." My mother sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "Amelia, your life has become very peculiar." Jason smirked teasingly. "So sis, your new boyfriend makes reality-warping chocolates, and your dog speaks fluent French and can apparently read minds. Typical week, huh?" Lucien chuckled softly, gently diffusing the tension. "Apologies for the confusion. My chocolates allow brief glimpses of alternate possibilities. Think of them as reality tasters." Emily sighed romantically. "This is amazing. Imagine all the possibilities." Jason rolled his eyes playfully. "Oh yeah, like Amelia saving the universe." Lucien smiled mysteriously. "Exactly that, perhaps." Dinner continued with excited chatter about alternate realities, future possibilities, and Charlie's newfound abilities. My family eventually left, amused but surprisingly accepting of my strange new life. Later, Lucien and I stood quietly outside beneath a sky filled with stars. I sighed softly, leaning against him. "Well, that could have been worse." He laughed warmly, holding me gently. You handled it perfectly, Amelia. Charlie barked cheerfully. Ils sont aimés mes talents linguistiques. I laughed softly, petting him affectionately. Yes, Charlie, everyone loved your language skills. Lucien smiled gently, voice thoughtful. Amelia, your family accepted everything remarkably well. Most humans couldn't. I squeezed his hand gently. I'm lucky. But honestly, Lucien, you've changed all our lives. For the better. He touched my cheek gently, eyes warm. You've changed mine as well. More than you know. Charlie wagged happily. Et vous avez tous les deux changé la mienne. Lucien laughed gently. Yes, Charlie, and you've changed ours. Standing together beneath a peaceful night sky, surrounded by love, laughter, and gentle absurdity, I realized something important. Even if reality occasionally became complicated, messy, or completely bizarre, none of that mattered as long as we faced it together. Days after my family's unforgettable dinner, life around the cafe had begun to settle, well, as much as possible with a French-speaking, mind-reading dog and chocolates capable of bending reality. Customers now regularly visited not just for coffee, but also to glimpse my talented canine companion. Charlie had quickly become a local celebrity. People visited just to hear him speak, though I still spent most of my time translating his polite French commentary on everything from the weather to the emotional states of nearby squirrels. One peaceful afternoon, as Lucien and I carefully prepared another batch of chocolates, this time strictly labeled as safe for humans, the cafe door chimed softly. An elderly woman with gentle eyes and an elegant demeanor entered slowly. She looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't immediately place her. Good afternoon, she greeted softly, her voice warm and reassuring. My name is Eleanor. Are you Amelia? I smiled politely. Yes, that's me. Can I help you? Eleanor smiled gently. Perhaps I can help you instead. Lucien approached, his expression carefully respectful. Eleanor, it's been a long time. She regarded Lucien warmly, nodding softly. Indeed it has, Lucien. Still getting humans into trouble, I see. He chuckled softly. Only the most wonderful kind of trouble. Curiosity piqued, I glanced between them. You two know each other? Eleanor nodded gently, eyes twinkling warmly. Lucien visited this town many years ago, when I was just a young woman. His grandmother was a dear friend. She brought chocolates that changed my own life profoundly. I stared, amazed. Then, you knew the original Amelia? She smiled softly. Yes, she was my mother. My heart quickened instantly. Wait, you're saying I'm... Eleanor smiled gently, nodding. Your great-granddaughter, yes. Lucien knew you'd awaken someday. I've waited patiently to meet you. Lucien smiled softly, reassuringly. Eleanor has experienced the chocolate's effects firsthand. She can help guide you even further. Eleanor took my hand gently. Amelia, your gift is rare. Lucien's grandmother once showed me a vision of you. Many decades ago, she said you'd inherit the power to protect realities. But how? I whispered nervously. She smiled warmly. With kindness, intention, and love. Reality isn't merely science, it's emotional. Your heart guides your strength. Charlie, who had quietly approached, wagged cheerfully. Amelia a le plus grand cœur de tous. Eleanor laughed softly. Your dog is right. Your heart is your greatest strength. Lucien gently squeezed my shoulder. You see, Amelia? Your destiny isn't something to fear. It's something beautiful, something powerful. I sighed softly, feeling encouraged yet overwhelmed. But why me? Eleanor smiled gently. Because you care enough to protect others. That makes you powerful enough to shape realities. Not for your benefit, but for everyone's. Suddenly, the cafe door burst open. Thane stood in the entrance, his eyes icy and sharp, reality trembling around him. Heartwarming reunion, Thane mocked coolly. But Amelia's powers belong to me now. Lucien stepped protectively forward, voice firm. Leave, Thane. You've no place here. Thane laughed coldly, shaking his head. I'm afraid I disagree. With a wave, reality twisted violently around us. Tables levitated, colors inverted, and chaotic visions flashed through the cafe. Customers froze in shock, eyes wide with terror. My pulse raced frantically. Eleanor calmly whispered, "Remember, Amelia, intention and love." Nodding firmly, I closed my eyes, focusing intensely on the one thought that filled my heart completely. The cafe, my home, safe and warm, Lucien's gentle laughter, Charlie's playful voice, my family's support. Slowly, reality stabilized again. Tables returned gently to their places. Customers blinked, dazed but unharmed. Thane stared in genuine astonishment. "Impossible," he whispered harshly. Lucien smiled proudly. "Not impossible, just powerful." Thane hesitated briefly, then vanished bitterly, leaving the cafe quiet and peaceful again. Charlie barked joyfully. "Amelia la fée! Magnifique!" Eleanor gently squeezed my hand, eyes proud. "Beautifully done." I smiled weakly, still shaking slightly. "Thanks, everyone. I couldn't have done it without your help." Lucien smiled warmly. "You did that yourself, Amelia. Your heart was strong enough to anchor reality." I exhaled slowly, smiling gently. "Maybe, but I'm glad you're all here with me." The cafe slowly returned to normal, customers laughing off their strange experience as a trick of imagination, helped, of course, by Charlie's cheerful explanations in charming French. Later, Lucien and I stood quietly beneath the evening sky, Eleanor watching warmly from the cafe's window. Charlie lay comfortably at our feet, softly humming La Mer. Lucien gently held my hand, eyes glowing softly. "Amelia, you amaze me more every day." I laughed quietly. "You make it easy." He leaned closer, voice gentle, sincere. "We make each other stronger." I smiled tenderly. "Agreed," Charlie wagged lazily. "Vous êtes adorable." We laughed gently, the stars above glowing softly. Despite challenges, despite dangers, I knew that together, surrounded by friendship, family, and love, reality would always be whatever we chose to make it. In the weeks following Thane's dramatic confrontation, the cafe had settled into a surprisingly peaceful routine. Customers happily chatted, sipping coffee and tasting chocolates, ones carefully prepared with clear intentions and zero reality-shattering side effects. Charlie had become a beloved cafe mascot, frequently entertaining customers by reciting French poetry or offering insightful mind readings. Lucien continued teaching me to master my newfound skills, and Eleanor had become a comforting presence, quietly guiding us with her wisdom. But something else had shifted. My relationship with Lucien. Our quiet glances lingered longer. Smiles became softer, touches more frequent. Each shared moment felt warmer, charged with tender possibilities. One evening after closing, Lucien prepared an elegant picnic beneath the gentle stars behind the cafe. The sky stretched overhead like a velvet canopy, sprinkled generously with constellations. "Why the special treat?" I teased gently, leaning comfortably against him. Lucien smiled softly, eyes glinting playfully in the moonlight. "Because tonight's special. Exactly 1 year ago today, I arrived in this quiet little town. My heart quickened gently. Has it really been that long?" He nodded warmly. "Time flows differently when your reality changes every day." Charlie lay nearby, chewing lazily on a baguette and murmuring softly to himself, "Ah, la vie est belle." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You two have certainly made life interesting." Lucien gently took my hand, his voice sincere. "And you've made mine infinitely richer." Blushing slightly, I glanced upward, heart full. I never imagined any of this could happen. Lucien leaned closer, voice warm and gentle. "Perhaps that's exactly why it did. Destiny chooses those who least expect it." As we sat quietly beneath the stars, I felt perfectly at peace, until the air suddenly trembled subtly around us, colors flickering strangely in the dark sky. I glanced anxiously toward Lucien. "Did you feel that?" His eyes narrowed cautiously. "Yes, someone is disrupting reality again." Charlie stood sharply, ears alert. Quelque chose approche. A glowing figure materialized before us, its gentle form familiar, one of the observers we'd met earlier. "Apologies," the observer spoke softly, urgently. "But you're needed immediately." Lucien stood quickly, alert. What's happening? The observer's form rippled nervously. Thane discovered a powerful source of reality energy, a crystal hidden beneath the town. If he activates it, he'll permanently alter Earth's reality, trapping humanity in chaos. My pulse raced nervously. How can we stop him? The observer gently nodded toward me. Only Amelia's abilities can counteract the crystal's energy. You must confront Thane together. But hurry. Lucien squeezed my hand gently. We can do this, Amelia. Together. Charlie barked firmly. Nous sommes prêts. Within moments, we stood at the entrance of an old abandoned building at the edge of town. Reality trembled erratically around the structure. Inside, we found Thane waiting, a shimmering crystal hovering ominously above him. He turned sharply, eyes coldly amused. You're just in time. Lucien stepped protectively ahead, voice firm. Stop, Thane. You don't know what chaos this will unleash. Thane laughed bitterly. Chaos? Humanity thrives on chaos. Imagine the power, worlds reshaped by thought alone. I stepped forward bravely. You can't do this, Thane. Life isn't about control or power. It's about connection. Thane sneered dismissively. How naive. Connection makes you weak. Lucien smiled confidently, eyes gentle. Connection is strength, Thane. Watch. He gently took my hand, our energies blending perfectly. Warmth flooded through me. Confidence, courage, and love fueling my strength. Reality steadied instantly around us, colors harmonizing softly. Thane growled furiously, activating the crystal. It glowed fiercely, reality twisting violently around him. Struggling against the storm of chaotic energy, I focused deeply, remembering Eleanor's words clearly. Intention, kindness, love, your true power. I poured every ounce of compassion, every moment of love, every comforting thought into the crystal's chaotic energy. Gradually, the violent storm calmed, the crystal's glow becoming peaceful and gentle. Thane stared, shocked and weakened. Impossible, Lucien gently spoke. Love always wins, Thane. Reality is shaped by hearts, not power. Defeated, Thane faded silently, his energy dissolving harmlessly into the crystal. Reality settled quietly around us, peaceful once again. Charlie barked joyfully. Magnifique, Amelia. Formidable. I laughed gently, relieved. Lucien gently embraced me, whispering warmly, I knew you could do it. Returning to the cafe later, we found Eleanor waiting calmly, smiling proudly. Beautifully done, Amelia. I smiled shyly. Thanks to you. Lucien squeezed my hand gently. Together, we protected reality. Charlie wagged cheerfully. Nous sommes une famille extraordinaire. Laughing softly, I nodded warmly. Yes, Charlie, an extraordinary family. Later, beneath peaceful stars once more, Lucien softly whispered, Amelia, your strength amazes me. I smiled gently. Our strength. He leaned tenderly toward me. Our strength, our reality, our love. Quietly beneath starlight, Lucien gently kissed me, warm, sweet, and perfect. Reality had shifted once more, but this time, exactly as it was meant to. You'd think that after stopping a reality collapse and making out with an alien chocolatier beneath a starlit sky, life would return to normal. But normal had long exited the building, probably riding a croissant-shaped UFO driven by my dog Charlie. By now the town had become oddly accepting of our cosmic reality. People dropped by the cafe not just for coffee, but to ask if we could check their timelines or adjust their futures, just a little. We had to put up a sign on the door. Yes, we're open. No, we're not legally allowed to alter your fate. Please enjoy a muffin instead. Lucien was gracious with everyone. Charlie now wore a tiny beret and served as both greeter and translator, his tail wagging every time someone asked him to recommend a pastry in French. But then came the next twist, a subtle one. Our chocolates started glowing on their own. At first, I thought maybe we overmixed something, but when I bit into one and immediately experienced a memory I'd never lived, an alternate version of my high school prom where I'd gone with Lucien instead of my ex-boyfriend Greg, I knew something bigger was happening. Lucien, I said, my voice half full of wonder, half full of dread. I think the chocolates are starting to choose their own timeline links. He raised an eyebrow, gently examining the shimmering truffle in my hand. That's not supposed to happen. Yeah, I whispered. That's what I was afraid of. We soon discovered the cafe itself had become sentient. Not fully, but enough. Every item placed on a table began subtly aligning with a version of the person sitting there. If someone sad came in, the sugar packets rearranged into hearts. If someone was hiding a secret, the foam art on their latte showed a tiny lock. And once, when someone lied about being single, their chocolate exploded in a small cloud of glitter that spelled out liar. Charlie found it hilarious. C'est un chocolat qui juge. Lucien and I agreed we needed help. That's when Eleanor made her surprise return, this time bringing someone else. The woman who entered behind her looked like she belonged in a cosmic opera, shimmering robes, eyes that reflected stars, and a walk that suggested gravity was a mere suggestion. This, Eleanor said softly, is Kalia, the chocolate oracle. I blinked. I'm sorry. The what now? Kalia smiled gently, her voice like chimes in the wind. I'm the last of a lineage entrusted with guiding chocolate-based reality modulation. Your cafe has become a nexus point. Lucien inhaled sharply. A nexus? Here? She nodded. This place now sits at the intersection of multiple timelines. You didn't just stabilize Earth's reality, Amelia. You activated a convergence point. I stared blankly. By baking? Kalia's smile deepened. By feeling. Every chocolate you made carried intention, memory, and feeling strong enough to bind realities. Charlie tilted his head. Alors, elle est une sorte de déesse de cacao? Kalia laughed softly. Something like that. Lucien looked at me with something between awe and concern. This changes everything. You're telling me, I whispered. So what now? Do I get a badge? A multiverse apron? Eleanor stepped forward, eyes serious. It also means threats will come, beings drawn to nexus points. Ones who don't just bend reality, they break it. Kalia nodded. To protect this place, Amelia, you must accept your role fully. You must become more than the girl who baked the impossible. You must become the guardian of the Timeline Cafe. Silence filled the room. Then Charlie, without missing a beat, muttered, On devrait faire des t-shirts. Lucien chuckled under his breath. We'll need more than merch. Kalia opened a small galaxy-shaped box and handed me a delicate ring made of what looked like crystallized starlight. This will help you stabilize local timelines. It amplifies memory, emotion, and intention. Use it only when your heart is clear. I slipped it on. It shimmered gently, then hummed against my skin like a second heartbeat. I laughed gently, relieved. Lucien gently embraced me, whispering warmly, I knew you could do it. Returning to the cafe later, we found Eleanor waiting calmly, smiling proudly. Beautifully done, Amelia. I smiled shyly. Thanks to you. Lucien squeezed my hand gently. Together, we protected reality. Charlie wagged cheerfully. Nous sommes une famille extraordinaire. Laughing softly, I nodded warmly. Yes, Charlie, an extraordinary family. Later, beneath peaceful stars once more, Lucien softly whispered, Amelia, your strength amazes me. I smiled gently. Our strength. He leaned tenderly toward me. Our strength, our reality, our love. Quietly beneath starlight, Lucien gently kissed me, warm, sweet, and perfect. Reality had shifted once more, but this time, exactly as it was meant to. You'd think that after stopping a reality collapse and making out with an alien chocolatier beneath a starlit sky, life would return to normal. But normal had long exited the building, probably riding a croissant-shaped UFO driven by my dog Charlie. By now, the town had become oddly accepting of our cosmic reality. People dropped by the cafe, not just for coffee, but to ask if we could check their timelines or adjust their futures. Just a little. We had to put up a sign on the door. Yes, we're open. No, we're not legally allowed to alter your fate. Please enjoy a muffin instead. Lucien was gracious with everyone. Charlie now wore a tiny beret and served as both greeter and translator, his tail wagging every time someone asked him to recommend a pastry in French. But then came the next twist, a subtle one. Our chocolates started glowing, on their own. At first I thought maybe we overmixed something, but when I bit into one and immediately experienced a memory I'd never lived, an alternate version of my high school prom where I'd gone with Lucien instead of my ex-boyfriend Greg, I knew something bigger was happening. "Lucien," I said, my voice half full of wonder, half full of dread, "I think the chocolates are starting to choose their own timeline links." He raised an eyebrow, gently examining the shimmering truffle in my hand. "That's not supposed to happen." "Yeah," I whispered. "That's what I was afraid of." We soon discovered the cafe itself had become sentient. Not fully, but enough. Every item placed on a table began subtly aligning with a version of the person sitting there. If someone sad came in, the sugar packets rearranged into hearts. If someone was hiding a secret, the foam art on their latte showed a tiny lock. And once, when someone lied about being single, their chocolate exploded in a small cloud of glitter that spelled out liar. Charlie found it hilarious. "C'est un chocolat qui juge." Lucien and I agreed we needed help. That's when Eleanor made her surprise return, this time bringing someone else. The woman who entered behind her looked like she belonged in a cosmic opera. Shimmering robes, eyes that reflected stars, and a walk that suggested gravity was a mere suggestion. "This," Eleanor said softly, "is Kalia, the chocolate oracle." I blinked. "I'm sorry. The what now?" Kalia smiled gently, her voice like chimes in the wind. "I'm the last of a lineage, entrusted with guiding chocolate-based reality modulation. Your cafe has become a nexus point." Lucien inhaled sharply. "A nexus? Here?" She nodded. "This place now sits at the intersection of multiple timelines. You didn't just stabilize Earth's reality, Amelia. You activated a convergence point." I stared blankly. "By baking?" Kalia's smile deepened. "By feeling. Every chocolate you made carried intention, memory, and feeling strong enough to bind realities." Charlie tilted his head. "Alors, elle est une sorte de déesse de cacao?" Kalia laughed softly. "Something like that." Lucien looked at me with something between awe and concern. "This changes everything." "You're telling me," I whispered. "So what now? Do I get a badge? A multiverse apron?" Eleanor stepped forward, eyes serious. "It also means threats will come. Beings drawn to nexus points. Ones who don't just bend reality, they break it." Kalia nodded. "To protect this place, Amelia, you must accept your role fully. You must become more than the girl who baked the impossible. You must become the guardian of the Timeline Cafe." Silence filled the room. Then Charlie, without missing a beat, muttered, "On devrait faire des t-shirts." Lucien chuckled under his breath. "We'll need more than merch." Kalia opened a small galaxy-shaped box and handed me a delicate ring made of what looked like crystallized starlight. "This will help you stabilize local timelines. It amplifies memory, emotion, and intention. Use it only when your heart is clear." I slipped it on. It shimmered gently, then hummed against my skin like a second heartbeat. The moment I wore it, everything around me shifted. I saw flickers, glimpses of people walking into the cafe from dozens of possible realities, versions of myself, Lucien in different forms, even a French-speaking cat that replaced Charlie in one world. I blinked, heart pounding. Lucien steadied me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think the cafe just showed me everything that could be." "And that," Kalia said, "is only the beginning." The door chimed behind her as she left as suddenly as she'd arrived. Lucien looked at me solemnly. "Do you want to continue this?" I took a breath. "I started by making chocolate. Now I'm guarding the multiverse. Honestly, I've had worse career pivots." Charlie wagged. "Tu es né pour ça, Amelia." And maybe I was. Because even though my life had become a cosmic pastry drama with timeline glitching desserts, I felt ready. I looked around the cafe, the customers sipping coffee, the tiny ripples of destiny glowing faintly around their cups. Lucien beside me and Charlie at our feet. This was my world now, and I wasn't afraid of it. The very next morning, I was awakened not by sunlight, nor the sweet aroma of croissants, but by the sound of Charlie barking out an urgent warning in French. Amelia, lève-toi. Les guimauves ont commencé à bouger tout seul. I blinked. The marshmallows are doing what? Still in my pajamas, I ran downstairs, nearly slipping on a floating eclair. The kitchen was in complete disarray. Baking sheets hovered midair. The mixing bowls rotated like mini planets. And in the center of it all, on the pastry counter, a small army of glowing marshmallows stood in formation. Lucien, calm as ever, was sipping espresso in the corner. They've developed sentience overnight, he said casually, as if talking about the weather. Apparently, your emotional resonance while stirring last night activated the sugar code. The what code? I gasped. The sugar code, Lucien repeated patiently. It's a rare phenomenon. If an ingredient is infused with pure, high-intensity emotion during preparation, usually longing or existential dread, it sometimes awakens. Charlie barked again. Ils réclament leur propre vitrine dans le café. They want their own display case now, I said, hands on hips. Lucien nodded. They've appointed a leader. That one. He pointed to a slightly larger marshmallow wearing a crumb like a tiny cape. The marshmallow blinked at me and squeaked in a high-pitched voice. Je suis Beaumiel, le premier du sucre. I am Beaumiel, Lucien translated, first of the sugar. Of course he is, I muttered. What does he want? Beaumiel puffed himself up proudly and squeaked again. Indépendance sucrée, égalité des desserts, fraternité moelleuse, Charlie interpreted, tail wagging. He wants independence for all sentient pastries. Also, a velvet-lined marshmallow throne, Lucien smiled. He's remarkably eloquent. I sat on the counter, rubbing my temples. Okay. We're not negotiating with sugary revolutionaries before coffee. Suddenly, the ring on my finger pulsed with warm light. A vision flickered across my mind. A version of the café where the marshmallows had taken over, turned the espresso machine into a throne, and forced everyone to wear frosting hats. I gasped. They're trying to create a splinter timeline. Lucien raised an eyebrow. We'll need to stabilize reality immediately, or we're going to be trapped in a sticky dictatorship. Eleanor arrived moments later, holding a muffin wrapped tightly in foil. This one woke up too, she said gravely. It's been humming show tunes. We stared at the muffin. It vibrated slightly and sang softly. I dreamed a dream of chocolate rain. Charlie tilted his head. Cette brioche souffre. Lucien peered at it thoughtfully. This muffin has residual regret baked into its core. It's developing emotional memory. I knew I was sad while making it, I whispered. I was thinking about my ex, and also how I ran out of cinnamon. Eleanor unwrapped it slowly. We have two options. Eat it and risk absorbing its memory spiral, or let it complete its song and possibly awaken the pastries upstairs. Before anyone could vote, Beaumiel leapt forward with heroic intensity. Je vais absorber la chanson pour le peuple. And just like that, the marshmallow leader flung himself into the muffin, disappearing in a puff of powdered sugar and emotional closure. The muffin immediately went silent. Lucien whispered, he sacrificed himself for dessert diplomacy. Charlie lowered his head. Un héros sucré. I exhaled deeply. That was the most dramatic breakfast I've ever had. Later, Lucien and I sat together in the quiet cafe. Reality finally stable again. For now. I sipped my coffee while watching customers enjoy croissants, unaware of the marshmallow rebellion that nearly rewrote Earth's history. Lucien looked at me gently. You're handling all of this with extraordinary grace. I laughed softly. I literally just held a peace summit between pastries. He smiled. Exactly. I glanced at him, heart quietly racing. You really think I can keep doing this? Holding the cafe together? Managing the Nexus? Preventing snack-based timelines? Lucien reached across the table, taking my hand. You were never just a baker. You were always a guardian. You just hadn't baked your way into it yet. Charlie jumped into my lap, licking my cheek. Et tu es notre préférée, Amelia. Outside, the sky shifted slightly, a shimmer of overlapping timelines rippling like water. But within the cafe, everything felt right. Warm, whole, until a young man burst through the door, breathless, clutching a bag of jelly beans that glowed like quasars. "I think I messed up the candy aisle," he panted. "The sour ones are singing in Latin." Lucien groaned. "Not the hyper-sentient jelly beans again." I stood, finishing my coffee. "Let me grab my apron." Charlie hopped off my lap, ready for action. "C'est reparti." The jelly bean crisis, to everyone's surprise, was quickly resolved by Charlie. He simply barked a Latin phrase he'd picked up in a dream, which apparently was the exact vibrational frequency that Candy needed to stop chanting and start acting normal again. By this point, I'd stopped questioning how Charlie knew anything. Instead, my attention turned towards something deeper, something stranger. One night, while closing the cafe, I noticed an old recipe card tucked behind a loose brick in the back wall. The handwriting was delicate, swirling like stardust. At the bottom, it was signed A. Rosemont, Time Walker 1901. Lucien's face changed the moment I showed it to him. "This recipe," he said slowly, eyes darkening with awe. "It shouldn't exist." "Why not?" I asked, heart already thudding. "Because this is a memory seed, a forbidden one. When baked, it allows you to enter someone else's deepest memory, not just observe it, but relive it, as them." I stared at the faded parchment. "Someone hid this, here, in the cafe." Lucien nodded. "And they left it for someone like you to find." That night, I couldn't sleep. The recipe called to me, not with words, but with feelings, longing, regret, love. By dawn, I had gathered the ingredients: flour, star sugar, echo vanilla. A single tear from a moment you tried to forget. Lucien watched silently as I mixed. "Are you sure, Amelia? This kind of baking changes you." I looked into his eyes and whispered, "I need to know who she was. The first Amelia, my great-grandmother, the one who started all this." The oven hummed as the batter took shape, glowing faintly with soft silver light. The moment the cake was done, time tilted sideways. Reality didn't shatter. It melted. I blinked and found myself in her shoes, literally. I stood in a 1920s kitchen, flour-dusted hands, hair pinned up. Outside, horses clopped gently down cobblestone streets. The air smelled of coal smoke and rose jam. And then he walked in. Lucien. Or not Lucien. He was younger, or older, or simply other. But it was him, the same eyes, the same quiet warmth. He wore a deep emerald coat and smiled as he entered. "Amelia," he whispered, and she, smiled back. "You're late, traveler," he laughed. The train from Andromeda had a wormhole delay. They kissed, a soft, aching kiss filled with unspoken history. This wasn't a fling. This was something cosmic. She had given him chocolate. He had given her stardust. But the war between timelines had begun, and someone powerful, was hunting people like him. Time walkers, reality benders, bakers of impossible things. He placed something in her hand, a recipe card, the very one I just baked. "If you ever need to remember this," he whispered, "bake this, and you'll find your way back to me." She whispered, "But what if I forget who you are?" He touched her chest softly. "Then your heart will remind you." The moment blurred, cracked like porcelain, and I was pulled back into the cafe, gasping, crying, my hands trembling. Lucien caught me. "Amelia, you saw her." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. "She loved you. It was you. Or some version of you." He held me tighter. "I've loved you across centuries, Amelia. Every version of you." I stared into his eyes. Then maybe that's why the cafe chose me. Not just because I could bake, but because I remembered, even when I didn't know I was remembering. Charlie patted over quietly and rested his head on my lap. "Je crois que l'amour peut traverser le temps." Lucien smiled. "So do I." For a long while, we just sat together on the cafe floor, surrounded by the hum of the oven, the scent of memory cake still warm in the air, and the flicker of other timelines gently pulsing beyond the walls. The cafe wasn't just a building, it was a memory chamber, a love story that refused to be erased. And I was the one chosen to keep it alive. After the memory cake, nothing felt quite the same. The cafe walls hummed with a resonance I hadn't heard before, a soft vibration like the murmur of forgotten conversations. Lights flickered just slightly when I felt strong emotion. Customers began reporting odd sensations after eating even the mildest desserts. Déjà vu, glimpses of loved ones long past. One man claimed he remembered being born, twice, and then there were the macarons. It started innocently enough. I'd prepared a fresh batch, lavender, rose, dark chocolate, sea salt. But when I handed one to an elderly woman who'd lost her husband years ago, she froze. Her hands trembled. Tears filled her eyes. "Are you okay?" I asked gently. She nodded slowly, holding up the half-eaten macaron. It spoke to me. Lucien, standing nearby, leaned in. "What did it say?" The woman smiled through her tears. It said, "I still wear the blue shirt, the one you hated." She looked up, eyes shining. That was his voice, and he used to wear this hideous blue shirt I could never stand. He only wore it after I passed. He used to say it was his armor. We all fell silent. That night, Lucien and I pulled the rest of the macarons from the shelves. I broke one open gently, and tucked inside the delicate shell, curled like parchment, was a note. It wasn't handwritten, but it wasn't typed either. It was emotion-formed. Language woven from longing. It read, "I found you once in Istanbul. You wore yellow. I was still pretending not to remember you." Lucien read it aloud softly, his voice low and reverent. "These aren't just memories," I whispered. "They're messages." "From lovers," he nodded, "across timelines, hidden in the sugar lattice. The macarons are recording echoes." We spent the entire night opening more. Each one carried something different. A confession in the shape of a recipe, a marriage proposal never delivered. One simply said, "Tell her I wasn't afraid." "Just sorry." Charlie sat on the counter beside us, deeply moved. "C'est si beau que j'en ai des frissons." Eleanor appeared quietly in the doorway at dawn. "You've activated the whisper layer," she said softly. "It's rare. Few bakers ever reach that frequency." I turned toward her. "What does it mean?" She came closer, touching one of the notes with reverence. "It means people who've loved deeply but been separated by fate now have a place to speak again. The cafe has become their conduit." Lucien's eyes met mine. "And you're the one allowing their voices through." I looked around the space at the small glowing notes fluttering like fireflies. "Then we have to honor them, record them, share them." Eleanor smiled gently. "You're becoming not just a baker, Amelia. You're becoming a keeper." For the next few weeks, the cafe subtly transformed. We created a corner called the Memory Nook, lined with soft velvet seats, low lighting, and a wall of glass jars filled with glowing macarons, each one labeled with the emotion they carried: regret, hope, longing, reunion. People came and chose their macaron carefully. Sometimes they wept, sometimes they laughed. One young woman came every Tuesday to read messages from a parallel self who had made better choices. Lucien and I, between our own secret kisses and cosmic responsibilities, kept documenting them all. We learned to listen differently, not with ears, but with hearts. One evening, as I closed the cafe, I found a macaron glowing faintly in the center of a table. It hadn't been made by me. I picked it up gently, heart racing, and broke it open. Inside was a tiny note, still warm. It said, "You are the reason I keep choosing this world. Every version of me, in every timeline, always falls in love with you." My breath caught. I looked up. Lucien stood in the doorway watching me. "It's true," he said softly. "That macaron didn't come from sugar. It came from memory. Mine." He stepped closer, voice low. "I've met you in 1,000 realities. Sometimes you were a scientist, sometimes a poet. Once you were a warrior who hated chocolate, but always, you were the one." Tears welled in my eyes. "How long have you known?" "Since the first time you said my name like you already knew it," he whispered. "That first day, at the counter." We stood in silence, the air thick with memory and sweetness. Charlie broke it, ever loyal, ever grounded. Je propose qu'on ferme ce soir avec un câlin groupé. We laughed, cried, and held each other, wrapped in warmth, scent, and meaning. This cafe was never just a bakery, it was a lighthouse. And I was just the keeper of the kitchen and the soul of 1,000 love letters wrapped in sugar. The morning light slipped through the cafe windows like warm butter, golden and slow. It painted everything it touched in nostalgia. My coffee mug, the display case full of glowing macarons, and Lucien's quiet face as he stirred a pot of caramel, with the kind of reverence most people reserve for symphonies. Charlie dozed on the counter, a croissant balanced perfectly on his head, murmuring in his sleep about French cheese and interdimensional tennis. And I stood in the center of it all, barefoot on warm tile, heart full in a way I'd never known before. The cafe was quiet now, but not empty. Never empty. The walls held stories. The air shimmered faintly with the presence of those who had passed through in body or memory. The scent of sugar and stardust lingered like perfume. It had been 3 months since the macarons began speaking, 2 months since the marshmallow uprising, 1 month since the interdimensional wedding in the courtyard between 2 parallel versions of the same woman. Both named Beatrice, both in love, both absolutely certain this was their only chance. We'd catered the whole thing in velvet cupcakes infused with shared dreams. And now, it was time. Lucien looked up from his saucepan. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes, it's time to take the cafe on the road." Because here's the thing. When you're the keeper of a Nexus Point cafe, you don't stay in one place forever. Not when there are others like you. People across galaxies who've lost their memories, forgotten their first loves, or never tasted anything sweet enough to heal a fractured heart. The cafe had begun vibrating faintly each night, calling us outward, not collapsing, expanding. Eleanor had returned only days ago, bringing a strange map written in glowing ink and baked into phyllo pastry. We'd eaten half of it by accident before realizing it was our itinerary. But it was fine. The stars had a sense of humor. Lucien approached me now, wiping his hands on his apron, eyes glowing with something eternal. "We'll leave tonight," he said gently. "The cafe knows." I touched the counter, whispering softly, "Thank you." A quiet hum answered back. That evening we packed everything. Not just supplies, but the cafe itself. It folded gently into a glowing orb no larger than a watermelon. A sentient one, apparently, because it purred when I touched it. We stood beneath the night sky, the real one this time. Not the sky of dreams or projections or melted realities. The stars were bright and sharp, the kind that reminded you Earth was just one pixel in a cosmic love letter. Charlie adjusted his travel scarf. "Nous partons à l'aube des desserts." Lucien smiled, tucking the cafe orb into a satchel that looked suspiciously like a giant cupcake. "Where to first?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Wherever someone needs to remember something beautiful, wherever someone's heart has forgotten the taste of love." I reached for his hand and he took it without hesitation. As we walked toward the edge of town where the roads turned strange and space bent like taffy, I looked back one last time. The town shimmered softly in the distance, lit by lamplight and old love. "I'll miss this place," I whispered. Charlie trotted ahead, tail high. "Don't worry, I'm downloading it sent." Lucien laughed quietly. "We don't leave places like this behind, Amelia. We carry them forward." And he was right, because every macaron we'd made, every cake we'd wept into, every chocolate that had whispered someone's name in the middle of the night, it was all part of us now. Oven-warmed memories, cupboard-kept hopes, a sugar-laced future. We disappeared down the road, a girl, a chocolatier, and a French-speaking dog carrying a sentient cafe in a cupcake bag, on a mission to heal the universe, one dessert at a time. And now I ask you one last question. If someone you loved had forgotten you across time, would you bake your memories back into their heart? Tell me your answer in the comments. And don't go far, because next time, I'll tell you what happened when we served espresso to a time traveler who didn't know he was already in love. Thank you for listening.